In automotive news today, Mazda has finally decided to discontinue the Miata due to slow sales and everyone on the planet buying bloated SUVs.
No! That was the worst dream ever. Can you imagine Mazda discontinuing the Miata? I don't know though, this spunky little roadster has never really sold all that well, and we currently live in an automotive landscape infatuated with giant pickups and amorphous crossovers. Mazda killing off this thing might be closer to reality than we'd even want to admit. The Miata was built purely for driving fun, which honestly, not that many people really care about. I know you do, that's why you're watching this video. But the general car buying public, maybe not so much. And aside from the Subaru BRZ and the Toyota 86, there aren't really any cars like it. In an era where traffic is getting worse, driving is becoming less enjoyable, I think we need the Miata now more than ever. Is this incredibly fun, somewhat impractical convertible still relevant? Today, let's find out. The 4th gen MX-5 Miata has been around for a few years, so why bother making a video with it now? Well, there have been a few changes to the 4th gen since it was introduced for the 2016 model year, the biggest being the bump up to 181 horsepower in 2019. And for this 22 model, the big news is the kinematic posture control, which sounds like some sort of chiropractor's tool. Terrible name aside, what it does is actually pretty cool. It's basically a type of brake torque vectoring. It applies braking force to the inside rear wheel to provide sharper cornering, and supposedly it will also help reduce body roll. But in general, the formula for this car has basically remained unchanged since the Miata was introduced way back in 1989. Lightweight, small, nimble, convertible that you can toss around on a back road and have fun without even exceeding the speed limit. So what I have here is a top-tier Grand Touring trim with a manual transmission. An automatic can be had, and as of this year, it's only available on the Grand Touring trim. But really, if you want an auto, just buy something else. A retractable hardtop version is available, but this one, as you can see, has the soft top. The power hardtop adds some weight, but it looks awesome. The other new thing that you may or may not have noticed is the paint color. Mazda calls this platinum quartz metallic, but it's just silver. I mean, it's a nice silver, but you know me, I tend to prefer cars painted in more fun colors. But they do make up for it with the best paint ever created, Soul Red Metallic. And I don't even really like red cars, it's just that good. Speaking of good, I think this generation is the best looking Miata. Yeah, I love the pop-ups on the 1st gen, but this one just has an elegance that the others don't possess. And even though this design is a touch more aggressive than the previous gens, you do still get a smiling grille right down here in the front. The Grand Touring has nice 17-inch wheels wrapped in Bridgestone Potenza high-performance tires. The base model gets 16s. All MX-5s get 4-wheel independent suspension, but with the Club and Grand Touring, the suspension is Sport Tune and we get Bilstein dampers. Unless you opt for the automatic. Again, don't get the auto. If you haven't spent much time around Miatas, just be aware that they are small, like tiny, and depending on the trim, they weigh around 2,300 to 2,400 pounds, which is insanely light by today's standards. It's nearly as light as the NA from 30 years ago. Pretty nuts considering this car has far more safety features than the original. But this small size, will it work out for everyone? I'm 6'3", and I've never really been able to fit in Miatas all that well. I raced an NA spec Miata for many years, and the only way I could fit in that one was to remove the seat rails, bolt the race seat directly to the floor, and angle it back. Even then, it was a tight fit. So what about this one? Actually, it's not that bad at all. If you're much taller than I am, or if you have a longer torso, it might be a challenge, but I'm pretty sure I fit in this ND2 better than I fit in any other Miata generation. It's cozy, but it'll work. The first thing we need to do is talk about one of the easiest things to operate in this whole car, putting down the top. Press here, pull here, and snap there, it's done. I'm gonna put it back up, press here, pull here, and latch. So easy. All right, so we need to talk about these seats. They're appointed in a really elegant terracotta Napa leather, which is new for this year. I may be in the minority, but I'm not a fan of leather seats. I'd rather just have cloth, though these do look fantastic and they're pretty comfortable. There's not much thigh support for my long legs though, but these do hold you in place pretty well on a curvy road, which is nice. And they're heated on the Club and this Grand Touring trim. The driving position, the shifter position, everything clearly prioritizes driving over everything else. Even the HVAC controls can be operated by feel without even taking your eyes off the road, which I love. All cars should be like this. Steering wheel looks good. It's a bit thin for my taste, but it works. The gauges look nice. You got a big analog tachometer in the middle, speedometer on the right, which is also analog, and on the left you got your digital gauge for fuel, temperature, and other information. And of course right here we've got the really nice looking and nice feeling shifter. Now in terms of design and materials, it looks really nice in here. It doesn't look or feel like a luxury car, but it has a very high quality, purposeful interior. Like the car itself, the infotainment screen is pretty small at 7 inches. It operates as a touch screen when the car is not in motion. If the car is moving, the touch screen is disabled and you can control it via this knob and these buttons right here. And you get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which I'd probably just use most of the time. In terms of storage, there's not much. There's a small space for your phone up here, a little tiny padded area for like a key. This center cubby is minuscule. You can probably fit your keys or a pair of sunglasses in there. And right here, you might wonder what this is. These little spots right there, this is a place where you can put one of your cup holders. I store it back here because oftentimes it's kind of in the way. So yeah, this is okay, but if you're shifting, you're gonna hit your elbow on that. So cup holder stays in this little area right here, which also, again, not very big. You could put your cup holders in there. That's the cup holder holder. Cup holder holder. There's another one up here. It slots in. It's fine if your passenger doesn't have knees. Just pretend you're in an old school roadster. Hold your drink between your thighs. And the trunk, yep, also small, 4.6 cubic feet. If you pack light, you and a friend could take a weekend trip, but yeah, pretty tiny. Not exactly a practical car, but if Mazda gave us more storage space, the car would have been bigger and heavier, making it less fun to drive. This vehicle prioritizes driving enjoyment over all else. So yes, you have to make some compromises when driving this car, but it's for the greater good. All right, so let's stop talking about the interior and the lack of storage space, and let's drive this thing. One thing you may notice is that there's no sport mode button on the Miata. That's because the entire car is a sport mode. I suppose you can consider this button right here a sport mode. Now, a road like this is where cars are at their best when you're not slogging through traffic, doing the type of driving that nobody likes, the type of driving that's a chore like commuting or dropping your kids off at school or going to the grocery store. If you actually like driving, the best place to be is an area where there's not many other people around. And the best car for this type of driving, only one of the smallest, lightest cars for sale today in North America. This one. You probably know what a Miata is capable of, but let me just recap. Because of its go-kart-like size, this little machine is eager to attack curves of any size, and it is literally impossible to drive this vehicle without a smile on your face. If you drive a Miata without a smile plastered on your face, there is something massively wrong with you. On paper, this car isn't impressive. Just 181 horsepower and 151 pound-feet of torque. But who the hell cares what anything is on paper? What matters is how it feels in the real world. The 2-liter engine loves to rev all the way up to the 7,500 RPM redline. Combine that eagerness with the insanely light curb weight of this car, it provides more than enough power to get you up to speed. Now, I'm one to think that 0 to 60 times don't really matter, especially in a car like this. But if you care about that kind of garbage, this car can do 60 in about the high 5 to low 6 second range. This engine is really good, but it's clear that it's just one of many instruments part of a symphony orchestra all working together. The 6-speed manual transmission is easy to shift and it's super precise. It feels almost as nice as the shifter in my Civic Type R, which is one of the best I've ever experienced, so maybe second best shifter I've ever used. And you don't need a fancy rev matching system because the pedals are spaced perfectly for heel-toe downshifting. But the best part about this transmission is the gearing. It's set up where shifts always seem to occur at just the right point to maintain momentum. Having raced a spec Miata in the past, maintaining momentum was always the most important part about racing a slow car. And good news, this ND Miata is not slow, unlike my 100 horsepower race car. All right, let's talk about handling and this new thing called kinematic posture control. Okay, I'm still not down with that name, but heck, I think the Skyactiv G name is kind of weird too, but what do I know? Now, since it's been a minute since I've driven an ND Miata, I don't have the benefit of an immediate comparison to a Miata without this KPC setup. So the idea here is that this is Mazda's take on brake torque vectoring. An ever so slight bit of brake pressure is applied to the inner wheel during a corner to help propel you through the corner with a bit less body roll. And they engineered this change with software only. No new suspension or brake components were used, so it doesn't weigh anything more than last year's model. I do feel like there is a small difference between a Miata equipped with KPC and one without. Like, you get an ever so slight bit of assistance when in the center of a corner. Now, without a back-to-back comparison, it's difficult to tell if that's something that you'd really notice in everyday driving, but if you're in the market for a Miata, it's nice that Mazda tried something here. But even with that kinematic posture control, there is still a fair amount of body roll. I'm used to driving my Civic Type R up on these roads, and that car is so planted, so flat on many of these turns. You'll never reach the limit of that car without breaking many, many laws. But you know what? The Miata is more fun, especially on a road like this that has so many low-speed corners. The body roll is there, but it adds to the enjoyment. It adds to the playfulness. And having a bit of body roll and movement helps you better understand what the suspension is doing. And you can drive this car confidently because you can reach the handling limits of the car at speeds that won't draw the attention of the fuzz. So yeah, on this particular road, a Miata that starts at under $28,000 is more fun than my Type R that would have cost 37 grand new. Maybe I should have bought a Miata. And other things you would expect, the steering is great. You always know what the front tires are doing. The brakes are great. Driving with the top down is great. I don't even really like convertibles, but man, it's awesome to have an open air experience in such a lively car. So what about ride quality? If you're on a choppy road, the ride can get a bit bouncy. It's just the nature of a small car with a short wheelbase. But in general, for the fun that you can get out of this car, the ride is actually quite good. I'd have no problem taking this car on a road trip, assuming you pack light. And on a road trip, you likely won't be spending a ton of money on fuel. This one is rated at 26 city, 34 highway, and 29 combined. And in terms of safety, well, yeah, we are lacking a roof, so there's one strike against us. But of course, there's hoops for rollover protection, and you can do an aftermarket roll bar upgrade. But there is a whole suite of safety tech standard, and in this Grand Touring, we get adaptive front headlights, which I love. If you do a lot of dusk or night driving, these headlights are totally worth it. Now, when talking about vehicle safety, most people think of their own safety behind the wheel, but car reviewers need to start talking about the safety of those outside the car. Over 7,000 pedestrians were killed by drivers in the US last year. This is the highest rate in 40 years. The trend of larger and heavier vehicles makes this problem worse, as they're more likely to kill than smaller cars, even at low speeds. In the US, it's estimated that almost 300 people are killed annually by cars backing up or pulling forward over them. Most often with a pickup truck or SUV because their blind spots are so huge, even with cameras. And that's one of the reasons why I love the Miata. Visibility is so incredibly good. Out the front, out the sides, and out the back, even when the top is up. Okay, so what does all of this cost you? This Grand Touring with the optional Napa leather comes in at just under $33,000. And keep in mind, the average new car transaction price is now at over $48,000. So around $30 for the most fun car on the planet is a downright steal. Now, in terms of competition, the Toyota 86 and Subaru BRZ are pretty close. Of course, you don't get the open air experience, and the interior is nicer on the Miata. Oh, and the Miata gets better fuel economy. But yeah, no place to put anything in this MX-5. You might also consider the BMW Z4, but that's getting pricey and it's automatic only. So let's make driving fun again. A car like the MX-5 is designed to do just that, to encourage you to get away from the city and away from the suburbs and find places where driving doesn't suck. And the best thing about the Miata is that you can have a blast tossing it around a winding road, and you look down at the speedometer and you're still going the speed limit. That's the insane benefit of driving a car that's basically a street legal go-kart. I'm not sure there's a vehicle under 50 grand that has better handling or is as fun to drive as a Miata. There's a reason why the lightweight chassis with modest power formula hasn't changed much over the years. It doesn't need to. But then, it's very possible that the Miata will eventually meet its demise thanks to the ever-growing crossover and SUV onslaught. But I hope people start to realize that driving a car is extremely overrated if it's not fun. So if you're like me and you want your driving to be limited to fun experiences only, there's no better car than a Miata. If you like this video and you want to see more like it, please consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can buy a Hello Road t-shirt at helloroad.tv/shop, or you can support me on Patreon at patreon.com/helloroad. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you're well, and I'll see you soon.
And Mazda introduced the Miata, a ragtop, a two-seater, a true roadster, the new Mazda Miata. It not only gives you a glimpse of